I've had a lot of first experiences here since I've been in the program. I'm second year right now. With that being said, the work that I've been making has broadly dealt with themes of sexuality, gender, identity, race, and class. But I've been making self-portraits that reflect the work is basically prompted by an obsession with desire, definitely, or people's obsession with desire, specifically with black bodies, male or female. But I'm using my own black body, to sort of visualize certain experiences or circumstances that aren't necessarily exact. So for instance, in this image, which is titled Sundays I Was a No-Show, it deals with feeling like being queer, being, in the South, for me specifically, growing up in the church, but not having any sort of connection, or feeling like I had a connection, even being a child, but not carrying through with being a religious person as an adult. But visually interpreting that, I didn't want to be, I'm rarely ever so specific in how I make images. But for this one in general, the fabrics, the curtains, a lot of my images are set up. Simple, and some just go, big, but sometimes that gets, my messages don't get across. So with this one specifically, I was thinking of what it means to wake up on a Sunday, what it means to, feel like there's something that you have to do, but you don't want to because you don't feel connected to it, specifically getting up, going to church. And I had this idea of, opening curtains or blinds to reveal a window, but there being no window. And if that's not there, if that window's not there, what else would be there? And a lot of the specifics as far as like the church hat, which could be any hat, but I'll call it a church hat since that's kind of the reference. And how it's tilted so it looks like I'm looking up, it looks like I'm expecting something. And how I was thinking of it was what can keep me going if I'm not a faith-based person. I'm blindly leading myself to whatever discovery, whatever experiences I'm wanting to have. And even deeper, the image, like the separation of the black curtain revealing a sort of pinkish, purplish curtain, speaks to femininity with just me separating and sort of revealing this kind of fleshy, this visually fleshy material. So yeah, that's kind of where my thoughts behind that image, and the images that I've made as part of the body of work has all been based on these different experiences that I keep saying I may or may not have had, because my queer experience isn't everyone's, my black experience isn't everyone's. So I'm wanting the work to be specifically, wanting to take myself out of it, even though I'm using myself, but I'm wanting the work to be a broader sense of a queer experience, a black experience, but not necessarily the work being about being black or gay, or queer, or however you identify. With this image, like color, as you can see, these are very bold colors, even with all the darkness and the glimmers of light in this one. Color is definitely a big part of my work, and I feel like color, for me, I never really think about why I like it. It's just, people have their what catches their eye, what they, what makes them stay with an image. And I know how bold I want to be. I know how, if I was a viewer, which I am, but if I wasn't the person who made these images, I would want a reason to stay with those images outside of the theme. It's not necessarily about making beautiful images, but it's about, what attracts people to an image for me. And with this one, this is definitely some earlier work. I made this one last semester, but this one, last year, but this one is after this one. So when I first started making images, I was definitely focusing on how color relationships work, which is definitely why there's a lot of red in this image, and trying to figure out textures, patterns, what certain things that I'm wearing that are close to my skin would do, because certain materials aren't necessarily seen on black bodies, or haven't been. Not necessarily just throughout our history, but representation in media, the things that we grow up with watching, how we inform, how children are informed. Like myself, when I was growing up, I would definitely not have seen, a black male in this position, unless I was watching Queer as Folk or Noah's Ark, which are even very limited representation of any queer person of color's identity. But for me, this image, I was not necessarily experimenting, but I was definitely wanting to show some sort of tension between what I'm doing and who I am, with lifting up this fabric and having all these apples down here. I've since retitled this. It's called Untitled Both here, kind of referencing this sort of masculine identity, feminine identity that I don't carry myself, I don't place myself within that, the idea of being masculine or feminine. But I titled it Both, but I've since titled it Like Apples from a Tree, kind of hinting more specifically to the body. So I feel like it's safe to say here, for all adults, but testicles dropping specifically within, males. And it's not necessarily, like I said, my experience with my balls dropping, no. But it's definitely hinting at this idea that every black male isn't the same. Everyone's experience isn't the same. But visually, the apples were a reference to Adam and Eve, and I've considered myself, my body in this image, resembling a tree. And I haven't really thought much about what that means, seeing myself as a tree. I definitely know it has something to do with growth. I'm wanting it to have something to do with growth, visually and representatively. But yeah, so their placement within the entire body of work, none of it's really narrative, but it's just, the images speak to each other. I'm wanting the images to speak to each other to be able to speak to an audience. So yeah, that's kind of where these images have grown from. But yeah, and definitely the work that I've made after this or before this, I'm wanting to interweave all of it together. Yeah. So.
Does anybody have any questions for Pietro before Adrian says something?
Beautiful work.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Best. That's the best part.
Oh my God.
Best. Okay, now we get to talk to the runner-up.
No.
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. This was the runner-up. Adriana, where is she? Oh, this is the best. This is actually the best.